One of the things that we've identified as a consulting firm is a lot of fear around software developers, and specifically whether or not software developers' jobs are going to be consumed through the use of generative AI. And so there's been this interesting trend. And if you go back and look at the podcast I was on with Will Iverson, we kind of spoke to where we see AI going and what the role will be in a software engineering standpoint. So what is a software engineer going to be doing in the future when generative AI can write all the code? And so there's this really interesting observation we've made. And I think the larger industry is starting to see this as well. And so a little history on this. During COVID, so 2020, 2023, software companies were hiring like mad. If you look at all of the data, there was massive onboarding of engineers, of technical and non-technical roles. And in 2023, we then saw the exact opposite. It was a collapse. All of the large tech companies started laying off employees en masse. A lot of those were non-technical. However, engineering departments also got hit as well. And so since 2023, we've actually seen a steady downtick in things like Indeed postings or LinkedIn postings for software development jobs. And the naysayers would say, well, this is AI, generative AI, consuming the jobs. We don't need as many engineers. And while that is true to a degree, what we've started seeing at the end of 2025 and coming into 26 is the exact opposite. We're now seeing the number of software development job postings increasing rapidly, like spiking like they were back in the COVID days. And the primary reason that we're seeing this, everyone can have their own opinion on it. But what we see with our clients is this, if we go back to the term AI slop. And so AI slop being, you get an output from an AI, it's not very curated, it's just a lot of noise. We get lots and lots of noise. Well, what we've seen is between 23 and 26, 2023 to 2026, non-technical project managers, business owners, stakeholders have had the ability to go into a generative AI and prompt it to build tools or systems or some sort of technical artifact. And so where we are now and what we're hearing from our clients is we have so many more ideas. We have so many more ideas that are becoming reality. It gets to the point where a product owner now has this site. It may be hosted, it may not, but they don't understand the fundamentals of how do I scale this? How do I go horizontal or vertical with it? How do I rapidly deploy it? Make sure it's widely available. What does it look like to add new product features onto it? Because what we see with generative AI is what it can hold within its context is great, but the larger you build your context window, the less accurate the output becomes. And so it's more likely to introduce bugs. And so we go back to this view. I read an article from Goldman Sachs where it was talking about as new technology is introduced, and this is historically, there's a 2-year portion where humans are removed. And then after that, we identify the new areas of work that's generated from that productivity, and we greatly see the increase. And that's what we're seeing right now in the software development space is all of the AI slop, all of the AI apps that have been generated, all the AI code. It's now generating so many bugs and so many new opportunities that companies are just now realizing, wait a minute, I need a software development workforce to actually manage, build, and maintain this level of work. When we think about what does the future of software development teams look like, this is not a new concept by any means because we've been employing this for years, but I think you have smaller, almost strike teams. So when you traditionally, if I was going to staff a software engineering team, I'm thinking I'm going to have front end roles, I'm going to have back end roles, I have quality roles, I'll have an architect, product manager, someone who's handling Scrum. Sometimes that's the project manager, sometimes it's one of the technical folks. I think AI has shifted that a bit. So when we talk about productivity increase, it's not you have a front end engineer who only does front end. I don't think that's the case. And we've been talking about this for nearly 20 years. What does a full stack engineer look like? I think AI actually cracked that nut, which is a full stack engineer today is someone who understands the scope of the software development lifecycle and understands what value the software they're creating is trying to drive. And so the industry kind of calls this prompt engineering, but ultimately you have to be able to couple the ability to do prompt engineering with true engineering, because what generative AI gives you will run, but it won't always be right. Whether that's architecturally, whether that's the value got lost, whether that's a scaling or security concern. And again, this is today. It'll continue to iterate, but I think development teams in the future will be more broadly based, capable engineers who have the programming knowledge so they can go in and make the changes where they need to, but they also are fully aware of the business value that they're trying to create. Companies have been saying we're going to lay off engineers, we're going to have generative AI take their place. I think what they found is that generative AI has created a new opportunity for software engineers. And it's really more on the quality and the architecture, security, operations. Um, I don't think the overall number will necessarily decrease past where we are. And that's what the data is saying as well, is we're actually seeing an increase again. I think we've basically hit the bottom. And I also think that if we tie this into where the industry was during COVID, a lot of the AI is going to destroy software engineering was overhyped. I think there was inflated hiring that we saw through COVID. And so we had to balance that out. We had to bring that number down. It was unsustainable. And we got back to pre-pandemic levels. And then all of the data that I'm seeing is that the software development air, field is going to continue to grow somewhere between 3 and 10% year over year for the next 10 years. So if AI is going to come in and remove some of the current jobs, how could companies prepare for that? The preparation really comes around in twofold in my mind. You need to understand that AI is not going to totally remove what your engineers are able to do. It's going to drastically increase what they're able to do. So the output of that is twofold. You now have more code to maintain, more code on the OpEx side, right? So your capital expenditure will be faster, shorter cycles, less cost. But the OpEx side of the budget, so your actual operations, the infrastructure, the new feature development on existing code, all of that, the quality, the testing, the input from end consumers, and then rewriting those features back in, all of that increases exponentially. So the question that I would be posing to a lot of the CIOs, CTOs is not how are you going to get rid of your engineering force? It's how are you preparing for your CapEx size to shrink while more value is created and your OpEx size to balloon massively. So from an engineering standpoint, what does that mean? It means you need to be able to understand quality extremely well. You need to be able to understand automation. It probably means you need to have a decent understanding of where your app's being deployed, how it's being deployed, because that's going to become part of your daily ownership. If you're looking at just the classes within a particular app, you're probably too narrow, and you need to be thinking about how does my app interact with the other applications at my enterprise. And again, it goes back to value. What value is my application creating for my business so that I can make sure to emphasize that and continue to prioritize what drives that value. If we look at the history of how AI started writing code, it was really at the individual function, and then it went up to a scripting level, and then it went up to like classes, and now it's basically it can somewhat decently think through a repository. And I'm a little hesitant to say that. We have quite a few projects we're operating where we're leveraging AI to do a lot of the software development. And what you see all the time, and Claude Code being, the gold standard right now in the industry, it still will forget about library XYZ. It'll forget about the design patterns you told it. Like you can have the most elaborate prompt, hey, I want you to have all this context in memory, and it will just forget it. And so another part of this is uh, if you write an ORM, an object relational mapping for your database, half the time it'll just forget that you have a library or class files that define your schema. And so what does it end up doing? It'll generate new methods where it's doing direct SQL calls. And so it takes a skilled engineer to be able to both understand the outcome they're trying to drive, as well as the anti-patterns and preliminary bugs that AI is going to create. I think it will continue to get better, but overall, where it will continue to fall down is around integrations, right? What's out of scope? How do other systems work? And this is where you constantly have to be guiding and scoping, and AI context will continue to evolve, right? We will continue to be able to pull more and more and more stuff in. It's how effectively and efficiently can the AI remember or prioritize the output the same way an engineer would. I think the role of an engineer is really going to be facilitating and guiding. There will be hands-on, and so when we talk about what code is difficult, it's ironically microservice architecture is really hard for it. I don't think there's a specific language it's going to struggle with, right? And we're also seeing that from like the IBM stock drop a few weeks back, right, where they announced, hey, by the way, Anthropic just released a version that can go rewrite all your COBOL, right? Well, IBM has a huge workforce that's all they do. They modernize that language, and their stock tanked because of it, rightly so, right? That doesn't mean those developers go away. Their expertise is invaluable. However, they are now empowered through something like Claude, able to get an exponential increase in their productivity. And I'll repeat this till, I'm blue in the face, but productivity is the hardest thing to measure. It's almost impossible. So whenever anyone's talking about, we're going to measure your productivity, it's non-existent and nonsensical. So we know it's happening. We can see it happening, but getting a true measurement is very difficult. So should IBM stock be dropping because of that? I don't know. But I think AI will be able to write basically any language. It'll be able to write new languages if we wanted it to. But to be able to understand the larger architecture, the value proposition we're trying to create, that's where it's going to fall down and struggle. So when we talk about AI orchestration, we're explicitly talking about automation of tasks or data. What we see, and it's funny that we talk about this because every company deals with this. Our company deals with this, right? We have 3 different disparate systems, all with their own specific data limitations. And what do? We have a human who goes in and pulls data from those 3 systems and then brings them together in Excel or Google Sheets or some sort of intermediary where we can then use human ingenuity to figure out how that data maps. So when we talk about AI orchestration, what we're actually talking about is how does AI identify the value in those different systems or bring that data together in an automated way. I think where my mind goes to, and I've been struggling on this one quite a bit, because what we see is most of these platforms that we're trying to pull valuable data in are SaaS platforms. And so getting access to the raw data and pulling it into something is where the challenge is for small businesses. When we're talking about enterprise scale, so we're doing this for lots of enterprises, right? So you'll have your data lake. We'll do data integration into something like Databricks or into Snowflake. And then there's a AI directly built into that to help glean insight or to develop your queries or to get real-time information off of whatever their architecture stack is. So there's a cost prohibition right now in my mind between what enterprise can afford and use and what the vast majority of SMB can really do around AI orchestration specifically. There's 2 points to this. Will SaaS providers allow more broad access to the data within their systems? It's your data, it's your IP. Or will they be prohibitive due to the security implications of rogue AI agents? And I don't know that I have an answer to that, but AI orchestration faces some challenges around it, around how do we bring data together in an automated way? What access should we give AI? And what does security look like on the other side? So adopting AI poses quite a few risks. It really comes down to the individuals on your development teams or the ones managing the AI. If and I've seen this too, brother. I told this story on a prior podcast as well, with the car dealership, right? It's fairly widely known. A car dealership actually added generative AI chatbot to their website. Someone was able to prompt engineer that generative AI to create a legally binding contract where they would sell essentially a $60,000 to $80,000 truck for $1. And the dealership had to honor it. So when we talk about risk, that's a massive financial risk that's imposed if you don't think through how the AI can be leveraged and the unintended consequences behind it. One piece I think about, especially when we're talking about software developers specifically, because software developers are being empowered with AI. I know another client where they had a semi-technical product stakeholder develop an app, and I forget if it was Gemini or Claude or whatever they were using. Uh, it built the app, was able to deploy it, and it ran perfectly. However, all of their encryption keys and their secrets were in the repository, and then they were sent to the front end. So it was actually in the client code. So every person who at the website was downloading a copy of their encryption keys. This is the challenge, right? Is how do you train a non-deterministic AI to develop something and provide the value that the user's asking for, but at the same time, it understands the nuance of security or of the outcome, right? So you could even go back to something like self-driving cars, right? There's the argument around if car's self-driving, does it prioritize the occupants of the car or does it prioritize the people outside the car? Right? How does it make it deterministic between which life to save? That is a very difficult thing for an AI to do. It'll give you an answer, but that answer ultimately is non-deterministic. It's not as reasoned as, say, a human would do. And that's where an engineer with their knowledge and foresight would need to be. It also raises the question around junior engineers, right? So when companies are hiring engineers, this is another trend we've kind of seen is a lot of companies are looking for very senior folks, because there's fear around that risk. If I bring in a junior engineer, they prompt engineer something, I'm liable, right? I've just introduced risk because they just don't know. So where my mind goes with that, the solution around this, the standard extreme programming principles that we've been using for 20 years, right? You do paired programming. Any junior engineer, yeah, they should have access to AI, but there should be paired programming with those engineers with a more senior person. And that more senior person isn't just, quote, programming. They're actually working with them on prompts. They're actually seeing how they're prompting, seeing the generation, walking them through what to think through, what they're missing. There's so much value in that. And it mitigates a lot of the risk of a junior just accidentally exposing your company to some form of liability. Historically, a lot of large enterprise has tried to keep their employees in specific boxes. right? It's a title and a box. So if you are an SDET, you only do testing. If you are DevOps or operations, you only operate. If you are a software developer, your job is to write code and push it into a Git repository. AI allows us to move too fast for that. So if you want to see the benefit of generative AI, you have to break down those barriers, right? We call them silos at most enterprise. You live in a silo and no one communicates. And then, we have a barrier sitting between DevOps and dev, and something just gets chucked over the wall and then something gets chucked back. And so we've been talking about that for 15 years. How do we break down those silos? How do we bring operations and development together? Well, we created a new role called DevOps, but now we just have 3 silos instead of 2. The shift has to be that your engineers are informed of, from the very beginning, what value are we trying to create for the company? How does that value help our customers? And then they can take that knowledge and work with your products teams to prompt engineer the first pass of it. And then they can provide the feedback on, here's all the anti-patterns and here's all of the uh, future bugs that this is creating. So your technical debt, like if you don't get ahead of technical debt with AI, you're screwed on the back end. And that's a hot take right there. You are really screwed when it comes to technical debt with AI because it inflates so fast. Like you want to talk about I've been on projects where we have 30 engineers all building a product. That builds technical debt, right? 30 people can't communicate at the same time. The technical debt output from an AI with a single engineer can far exceed what those engineers could do. So from bugs to anti-patterns to one-off code to monolithic files to, subdividing domains, like it's terrible. So when I think about what a company needs to do culturally, it's really around bringing the right folks into the conversation early and often, having buy-in across the team on what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then everyone working together to drive there. So tearing down those silos as much as possible. The first thing that comes to mind is actually what you should try to avoid, which is anyone coming and telling you, I'm going to do for you what I did for this other company. And what we see time and time and time again, whether it's architecture, whether it's AI implementation, whether it's governance, whether it's data engineering, whether it's infrastructure, it doesn't matter, right? Every enterprise is a snowflake in some way, shape, or form, right? And the consulting saying is you got to find where the skeletons are buried, right? Which closet do you need to open to find where the skeletons are? We say that because enterprise companies hire amazing talent. Like let's be real about that. They hire folks because of either their potential and their capability. So they all have amazing people, yet they're not meeting their goal. And consulting is built around the fact of going in and understanding what is the problem, the actual root problem that's not being addressed, that unlocks all of those people to be productive again. I think the most important thing is you're looking for a partner, someone who's going to listen first and then recommend. And that is counter to what a lot of the massive consulting firms do. Right? They'll come to the table and they'll tell you everything that you need to do. And they'll tell you every client across every industry that they've ever worked with that, hey, we've had all this success. The challenge is at a certain point, they stop listening and stop trying to explore what the problem is. And they're trying to apply a solution that worked for someone else. When I think of who are you looking for, you're looking for someone who's going to actually listen. And, they need to have the background. They need to have the understanding. Obviously, the industry is huge. There's definitely knowledge you have to gain, whether it's vertical or horizontal knowledge across industries. But ultimately, they still have to be hungry enough and willing to come in, listen to what's actually going on, and then work with that client to solve the problem. There's a book that I absolutely love. It's called Getting Naked. It's a older consulting book. I think it came out about 30 years ago. There's a quote in there. It says, the most valuable thing a consultant can do is have the hard conversations with the people who need to hear it. And that is ultimately what you want from a consulting firm. Someone who's willing to, put themselves in a very uncomfortable position to tell the client, hey, this is what you're ignoring, or this is what you're seeing and unwilling to act upon, or this is what you're not seeing. This is where your blind spot is. From a technology standpoint, it could be a million different things, whether it's the true technology, right? Whether it's the silos that have been built, or it's, lack of guidance or leadership or direction. Like there's so many different things that can plague the ability to be nimble and to drive value. And that's what you want from a partner, someone who will come in and be honest and, expose themselves to allow you to be successful. I would want to know how they've identified issues and how they've raised them or solved them. And it's difficult because consulting is a trust building exercise. Ultimately, I don't know that there's a clear answer on the onset. I know what a lot of folks do, which is, they look at they're a massive company. They have all this background. Of course, they'll be able to come fix my problem. And half the time that leaves them in a worse state than where they were before. It's getting to know who are you going to be working with, getting to know whether or not you trust their insight, and if they're willing to actually tell you hard truths. And again, it's a relationship building exercise. And that doesn't just apply to AI, right? That applies to everything in business. But I don't know that I have a magic bullet for it to be able to suss out one firm over the other. It's who do I believe I can trust to provide me the guidance and insight, and who is willing to take the time to find the true problem that's halting our progress. At Sierra 7, our approach is fundamentally different than what most consulting firms end up doing. I've been doing consulting for almost 20 years. I know collectively within our company, we have hundreds of years worth of experience. We founded our company and we are in this company specifically to work with people to solve problems and make productive gains. So, that's a big mouthful of consulting speak, but what does it actually mean? It means that we want to make our clients as successful as possible. And the way we go about doing that is identifying value that they can create and then partnering with them on a journey to deliver that value. And what it does is it reveals a few things. It reveals where the true challenges are within their organization, maybe within the structure or their direct leadership or peers or people who are reporting to them. And it allows us to actually address larger issues. Because the creation and value in tech is actually the easiest thing, right? Technology is not a difficult problem to solve. It's actually the people problem that we end up solving more than anything else. And so what we've done is we've looked at the industry as a whole from a consulting standpoint. There's the big four, big five, whatever you want to call them at this point, right? The behemoths that keep gobbling up every other company. And our business model and what it has been through Sierra 7, through prior companies, has been one and the same. We see them go on this 2-3 year journey. They copy paste a blueprint onto your company. And then at the end of it, you're left wondering, why did we pay what we paid and what did we get out of it? Our philosophy is to come in and make sure that you do realize that value. We have meaningful steps along the way. And along that journey, we're actually up-leveling your team, up-leveling your organization, and accelerating our clients into the roles and capabilities they want to be in. I was excited to have this conversation because we don't get to share this kind of knowledge widely or publicly a lot. We work with clients one-on-one. So whether I'm working with an enterprise client or an SMB or whoever it is, right? We have a very unique perspective across the industry. One day I could be in healthcare, the next day I could be in telecom, the next I could be in retail. Like it really is an input mechanism. Like it's like drinking from a fire hose. And so being able to actually take a lot of the knowledge and insight we're seeing and seeing a counter trend to what the industry is doing right now around hiring or firing. And I know a lot of my fellow engineers have been really worried about what does the future of my job look like? What does the future of my role look like? So being able to have a conversation that, maybe it's not as dire as you think. Yeah, there's an action there. And the action is, hey, we're going to have to gain some new skills. We're going to have to think about problems differently. And we're going to have to up level a bit, but there's still massive amounts of opportunity. It's either the same or possibly even more moving forward. That is an amazing message to be able to deliver when there's a lot of fear and uncertainty happening right now.